Hey guys, we're going to start up our next section title, which is called Latitude and Longitude. So on your notes, what you would do on your Unit 1 notes is just kind of skip a couple lines and then go and write down our next section title. So we already had down, our Unit 1 geography. We already had that written down. And then we had our section title, and then we had our information. So then you would just skip a couple lines, and then you would write down latitude and longitude. And then make sure you underline our section title, latitude and longitude. So go ahead and write that down, latitude and longitude, and then underline. And for latitude and longitude today, we're talking about how you get latitude and longitude and how you find that. So if you don't know what latitude and longitude is, we have these invisible lines that go across the planet that we just kind of made up. And these invisible lines tell us where we are at in the world. And they work just like how you use a graph. So typically you have a graph and the graph looks like so. Now in math course, you would look at the point. So there's a point right there I'm looking at. I would first go down and I would see I'm at 1. And then I would go back to the point and then I would go over and see I'm at 2. So I'm at 1, 2. That's what you do in math. In math, you go down and then you go to the sides. But just to make things confusing in social studies, we do the exact opposite. We go sides and then we go bottom. So we go sides and then bottom in social studies. So this point right here would be 2, 1, and this would be 5, 2. Why we don't do the same as we do in math, I don't know. But this is kind of what we do. Go ahead and make a bullet and write down the word values. Make a bullet and write down values. So bullet values. So there are two values when we're talking about a typical graph. You have your y value and your x value. Since the very first value we look at in social studies is a y value because we go over to the side first, and that's y. Let's start with y first. Make the number 1 and write down y value. So make a 1 and write down y value. Then make an equal sign and write down vertical. So we have y value equal sign vertical. So our y value is our vertical value that runs up and down. So it's right here. So this is where our y value is. It's the first thing that we look at when we're doing latitude and longitude, and it's on the sides of our graph, or in our case, maps that we're going to be using to figure out where things are. Number 2. So make a number 2. Number 2, for that, we're going to write down y is on the sides. So for number 2, we're going to write down y is on the sides. So when we're talking about y values, we're talking about how y is on the sides. So that's the first thing I do. I look at my point and then I follow it to the sides. And I follow the line straight to the sides. Okay, so wherever the point is, you follow that line straight over to the side. So you just follow those lines. Now, sometimes because the world is, not flat, because, we don't live on a flat world. Our world is somewhat round. Now, sometimes when you're doing the lines, they will be rounded. So they will be rounded sometimes when you look at the lines for a map. And that's just because our world is round. But you just follow the lines. Right? So you always follow the lines. So if a line's here and it has a slight curve, you just follow that curve. Okay? And you just follow it to the sides. So for number 2s that we have written down, y is on the sides. Make a number 3. Number 3, we're going to write down x value. So number 3, x value. And then make an equal sign at the end of it. So x value equal sign. And then we're going to write down horizontal. So x value equal sign horizontal. So the x value is our horizontal value. So that's the one down here. This is x. So this is our x value down here. And when we're looking for x, or we're trying to find the x value on a graph or on a map, we need to look at the bottom of the map or graph or the top. So it's going to be found on either the top or bottom of the graph or map we're looking at. Go ahead and make a number 4. So make a number 4. And for 4, we're going to write down x is found on the top or bottom. So once again, number 4, x is found on the top or bottom. Now, as I said, in math, x is always first. However, in social studies, we go the opposite. So you can see in our example here, you can see how it's showing this point right here, and you see how it's showing 3, 8. So that's what you're going to do in math. In math, you go x first, then y. But in social studies, it's going to be the opposite. Instead, it would be 8, 3. And over here, instead of being 9, 5, it's 5, 9. Okay. So it's 5, 9 instead of 9, 5. Okay. So in social studies, it's the opposite. So 2, 1, 5, 2, 8, 3, 7, 4, 6, 6, 5, 7, 5, 9. All right, so that's how it works in social studies. We go y and then we go x because y is our latitude. That tells us how far north or south we are of the equator. Which is probably the next thing that I should talk about. Okay, so now we have to talk about our axes and how they kind of work. So y value, our y line, that tells us how far north or south I am of the equator. Okay, so y tells me how far north I am of the equator or how far south I am of the equator. You can kind of see a map here of the Earth. I'll make it bigger so you can see it a bit better. So as I said, y tells us how far north or south we are of the equator. So what we're going to do is we are going to write down number 5. We're going to write down the word x-axis. Yeah, so 5 x-axis and then equal sign. So x-axis equal sign. And then we're going to write down the word equator. So x-axis equal sign equator. Now, so that's the x line. But that x line there tells us how far north or south we are of the equator. Okay, so y is how far north I am of the equator or how far south I am of the equator. And that middle x line, that line that's 0x, okay, that's the equator. So x being 0 tells me how far north or south I am of the equator. Once you got x-axis equal equator, then we're going to make a 6. And 6, our y-axis equal sign prime meridian. So y-axis equal sign prime meridian. So this y line right here, this is 0y. We call this the prime meridian. Now, unlike the equator is pretty easy to figure out, where it is. It's halfway in between where the North Pole is and the South Pole is. But we don't have any poles, like we don't have an East Pole and West Pole. So how do we figure out the prime meridian? Well, we kind of just made it up. We're just like, well, this we're gonna make up a line here that goes through Greenwich, England, and that shall be our longitude line. So we kind of just determined that, hey, we're just gonna put this line right here. Bam, that's the line. Anything to the east of it, we're gonna say is east. Anything west of it, we're gonna say is the west. All right, so that's how the prime meridian kind of works. Once you have 6, y-axis equal sign prime meridian, that's where we're gonna stop at for today.